It's an absolute pleasure to welcome Michael Olarewaju to From the Club, affectionately known by his many fans as Big Mike. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Honestly, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you. Well, Mike, tell us everything that we need to know about you in 60 seconds.
Oh, okay. I'm a husband, a father, a son, a brother, um, a lover of the Lord Jesus Christ, and yeah, I love football. Like that's my bread and butter. What else would I say? I think I'm a bit of a joker. I like a laugh. I can be a bit serious at points as well. But I do like a laugh and just try to enjoy life as best as I can. Really, to me.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned a few family members there, so you're obviously a good customer for Clinton's cards, all those birthdays.
They've taken enough of my money. I probably should start making them myself, to be honest. Oh, you know
Yeah,
what?
that's true.
You know what? Actually, I
Recycle them.
forgot. Having said that, I studied graphic and media design as well. So I'm a graphic designer as well, but I don't practice the trade too tough. But yeah.
And see another string to your bow, Mike. See all of these things, yeah. Well, we're recording this on Zoom, so it may not be obvious to everyone whilst you're sitting down as to why exactly that you're called Big Mike. How big is Big Mike?
Um, I don't know. I'm not that big. Maybe I'm being modest, but I'm 6'4". Um, yeah, just 6'4". Not too big. A gentle big.
And yeah, gentle, but BFG, exactly, you are gentle, and you're not only tall as well, but you like to work out in the gym as well, right? You're solid as well, aren't you?
Yeah, yeah. I take a lot of pride in my physicality, definitely. And I do. You know, it's funny. I don't actually love the gym, but it's a byproduct of me as a player. So I've kind of like grown to love the hustle, and I always call it the trenches, which the boys like banning me about. But yeah,
Yeah, I see that on Instagram. Yeah, yeah. So a lot of people say, like, how to have a physique like that, how much of it's in the gym and how much of it's diet? Because I've heard a lot of people say before that the diet is a lot more important than in the gym. Is that true?
ooh, I would say no. It's difficult to say. I don't think it's an exact science, and I think it would vary from individual to individual. But I think if you eat great and you don't do any exercise, you're not gonna have a six pack, for example. You're not
Yeah,
gonna
right, sure,
be
sure.
relatively ripped. But I think the diet is a huge part of it when you start looking at things like body fat, percentages.
Yeah, yeah. And have you always been big? Was you a big kid growing up as well?
Yeah, yeah. I think of one picture in secondary school where like all my friends are like probably like like mid bicep. I probably was always a bit tall. I was probably a bit more skinny at first, and then probably
Yeah.
started filling out a bit more towards the end of secondary school.
Yeah, well, that really helps, doesn't it? Because I know you played football from a really young age, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But that must have been really helpful when you're playing football and you're 2 foot taller than everybody else. There's an advantage to that, Mike, right?
Yeah, it was a massive advantage. At the same time, it's like at probably earlier days, probably felt like I was playing on stilts at a point. But
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So take us back to the beginning. And how did you begin your journey as a footballer, and how did you start getting scouted?
Oof, okay, so I think I'd probably go as far back as I went Chelsea soccer school. My dad took me Chelsea soccer school. I was probably like year four. I don't know if that's like, I think that's for me like eight or so.
Yeah,
To be honest, I think my dad loved football and I loved my dad, and what he loved, I grew to love. So I loved
yeah,
football
yeah,
too. And I went Chelsea soccer school. I think it all started there. To be very honest, like when I look back at those days, I weren't very good. I was always bigger than other kids, but I weren't necessarily the greatest, to be honest. But yeah, just started there and just seeing my dad's enthusiasm and love for the game. And just, I remember there was one thing he'd say, and God rest his soul, and he'd always be like, I would love so much to one day see you playing football with, our family name across the back of your shirt.
Oh,
Um,
mate. Wow.
and it's been an honor to be able to say I've done that, but obviously it's a bit gutting that he never quite got the chance to see it. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it goes.
So have you always been a centre back? Because we say centre back, you're also very comfortable on the ball as well, aren't you? So you're not like just a big lump in defence. You're very
Definitely.
comfortable. You can play out of defence as well. You've got a really good touch as well. Have you always played in that position?
Well, yeah, more or less. I think at points I was playing more of a centre mid role as well. But I think based on my size, I was always kind of like pushed to the
Yeah.
mid. But yeah.
You're lucky you didn't end up in goal because that's normally where the tall kids end up, isn't it?
To be fair, speaking of my young days, I went and go once. This is probably still primary school, and my dad picked me up after. He was watching it, picked me up after, sat me in the car, and he says, "Look, son, don't let me see you go and go again." That, that was the last time I ever went between the sticks. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. So, what do you remember about your time at Palace and Spurs as a kid?
Uh, I remember probably the first day in at Palace training, and then we had like a fitness test. And before I went in at Palace year 10, 15, I was running for the county. So I was really fit, like really, really fit. So I just remember that session there, training, playing, and just kind of like blitzing everyone on the bleep test, and just yeah, just thinking, yeah, this is mine.
And I mean, it must be so hard because you're saying you know you're 14, 15 years old at that point. You know, you're going to school. All of your schoolmates, I'm sure, are aware of what's going on. You must have been like signing autographs in the playground at that stage. How hard is it to like keep your feet on the ground?
I think it's definitely a challenge. I think if I'm like just being completely honest and looking back through my time, like I think for a long time after, especially after the year 11 period, going in at Tottenham, not being offered my scholarship, I think I probably for a good few years after that didn't realize it, but I was probably suffering with a little bit of depression around it and just disappointment because I think at that point I look back now and I thank God that I didn't get the scholarship because I think at that point I was probably a bit too big for my shoes. Um, I was a bit of a rebel at home, like not the most well behaved. Obviously, I got three sisters, so I was the only boy. But if I'm being honest, I look back and I was probably the problem child. So yeah, it was tough to keep my feet grounded. And I think in that environment where it's like a whole different world, when you add money into it and a bit of fame, it's almost a recipe for disaster if you haven't got anything grounding you.
Yeah, for sure. And was there any names that we'd be familiar with in those setups? Can you remember anyone you played with in those teams that went on to make it?
I remember two, mainly from Tottenham. Harry Winks was in the
Oh
under
yeah,
16s, but he was so tiny, but you could tell like he was probably like one of the marked kids. And Josh Anoma, he was last at Fulham, last I heard. But yeah,
yeah.
those are the main two that I remember.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, having left Spurs, you went on to go and spend nearly 5 years at Dulwich Hamlet. How did that move come about, and what do you remember about your time there?
So after not getting my scholarship, I basically had to go to college. I think I was born and raised in like a traditional African household where you're either meant to be a doctor, a lawyer, or some fancy job that requires like 5 years at university. But
So no pressure then. Yeah.
no pressure at all. But yeah, I was bound to go to college. I went to college and I was offered to play with a college team and all the rest of that. But I think at that point, I was still thinking, I want to play football. This is all I want to do. And then I had trials with Dulwich Hamlet's youth team, signed there, and then just kind of got my head down and played there whilst I studied my A levels at college.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, making your first team debut as a footballer must be an incredible feeling. What happened in your first ever game, and do you remember? And what do you remember about the build-up, Mike?
Um, I just remember being scared. If I'm just going to be honest and not paint a perfect picture of this perfect professional, I was just scared. Scared to get it wrong, scared to not impress. But yeah, once on the pitch and playing, making my first tackle, my first header, I think that a lot of those nerves just suppressed, and I could kind of start enjoying and growing into it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, as an Eastbourne Borough season ticket holder, I've had the pleasure of watching every one of your games this season, home and away. And it's fair to say that you made a massive impact and become a fan favourite almost straight away. How did the move from Dover come about, Mike?
Cool. So I signed at Dover, and there was a point where I think it was time to move on, time to get out of there, for various reasons. Some elements out of my control. And having left Dover, I was offered like quite a few clubs in the league below. And I remember sitting down with my missus and just basically saying like, babe, I'm not going back down the league. Like I've done my time. I felt like I've done my service, as I described it. And I'm gonna be here and then continue working my way up. And I think I came across Mark Beard. initially I was like an agent trying to like sort it out for me. And I just kind of felt like, you know what, let me just call this guy and have a conversation with him. I'm a big believer that in a conversation in the meeting, you get a feel for somebody and it says a lot. And so we
Yeah.
spoke, me and Mark Beard, and yeah, like I've probably never made a phone call with a manager and felt comfortable enough to banter and have a laugh on the phone, but we literally had a bit of banter and stuff. So I was like, I really like this guy. And then one thing led to another. I came in to trial train on the Thursday, signed on the Friday, played Taunton on the Saturday, and yeah, I guess
Yeah,
the
tools. Yeah, yeah. Wow. We're talking of Dover. One of the best games that you had, if not the best, in my opinion, was at Dover away on that horrible, cold, rainy Tuesday. Only just dried out from that now, I think. Did you go into that game with any extra motivation, with it being a club that you were at previously?
Um, yeah, I felt like being at Dover, it had its positives, but I think if I'm honest, its negatives by far outweighed the positive. And I think for me, it was just an opportunity for me to make a statement, which I try to do in every game that I play, but also just to like, I know this sounds horrible, but just drive the nail into the coffin and just make it clear that this is what's gone.
Yeah. Well, you played an almost pitch perfect performance. That game was it was so good to see. You're going to be going on to pastures new for the upcoming season, which I know many people are gutted about. What have been some of your favourite memories from your time at Eastbourne Borough, Mike?
Oh, I think one thing I'd probably chuck out first is I think with the journey I've had with football, and just kind of like a lot of setbacks, whether that's injuries or like people that have shown that it's tough to trust people in this game. I think one of the first memories that I'll probably hold on to is meeting Alan and Simon and kind of thinking, yeah, this isn't your usual.
Right.
I think it was just in particular just meeting those two guys is probably one of my first memories. Um, and then likewise with the first session training with Mark Beard, his characteristic, his nature, just a funny, lovely guy. That was another massive memory. And I think the next one will probably be my first game at Taunton. So in the time between leaving Dover to Eastbourne, I think it was probably about a week or two. And there was a lot of noise like, oh, Mike, you need to quickly go somewhere. You're missing out on games, blah, blah, blah. And I had a lot of external pressure or maybe like fear. And I
Yeah.
think for me in my heart, like I said earlier, it was me putting my foot down and deciding that no, like this is where I am and this is where I'm going to keep climbing up from. And just finding, just ultimately just trusting God in it, really.
Yeah.
And so when I went in at Eastbourne, I wasn't completely match fit, and I wasn't expecting to be like thrown straight in playing on Saturday. So I remember playing against Taunton, and it wasn't an easy game. Like it was a tough game, quite physical as well. And I think one memory I have, which doesn't put me in shining lights, but it's a memory just the same. I remember in the second half, I'm probably blowing at my bottom at this point, and the ball gets through to the striker. I'm pressing him from behind. He manages to shift it, but I know that if I don't make that tackle, then he's going to create an opportunity to score. And I remember tackling him with my head on the floor, so I'd slid in and used my head to get
Yeah.
it out
Right. Yeah.
because I'm just like the legs have given up on me. And I just remember trying to scurry up to get up, and he had his hand on my head. And when I've got up, the boys are like, "Oh yeah, in the changing room after they're like, Mike, you had grass all over your face, everything." It's funny because, yeah, I've never experienced something like that, but it's a bit of a funny memory.
Yeah. That's one of the things that always amazes me, Mike, because you watch Premier League TV on football on TV, and you see it's a very sanitized version of football, isn't it? And you just mentioned the hand on your head almost keeping you down, and watching Borough, and obviously you can get so close to the players from where we stand. The holding on to the shirts and the pinching and all the dark arts they call it, don't they, in the game? Has that taken you by surprise, or is that something that's always happened? At football when you play.
I think it's something that's, yeah, I'm relatively familiar with. I think a lot of the time people come up against me and assume, he is big, he is, a bit athletic. So I'm going to have to add a little something to try and get this guy off his game. So I've probably been used to it. But what's funny is that for me on my end, I think people watching me might assume that, yeah, he's like really aggressive and all the rest, which I would say I am. But I'm not so much the kind of centre half that's going to like pull your hair or step on your feet or pinch you or do anything else. My mindset is you play your game, I'll play my game, and I'll beat you with my game. And yeah, like if
Yeah.
you get one over, good luck to you, but I'll get you on the next.
Yeah, yeah.
Then that's always been
I'll
my
be
mind.
blessed to spend a little bit of time around the first team squad. I've got to say that it's a wonderful group of lads, from the outside looking in. Who did you find yourself bonding with most at Borough, Mike?
Um, oof. Do you know what's funny? Like naturally, when you get into a room of people, you naturally gravitate to maybe what's most familiar or what's most similar to yourself. But one thing I wanted to be intentional about was creating individual relationships with different people. So, like for example, in the canteen, you have some boys that always sit together, which is totally cool. But for me, I'd like to sit with some people one day, sit with others on another day, have a laugh with some, and so it's difficult to maybe pick one person out from the whole team. If you force me maybe to pick, oof, I don't even think I could pick one. Like, yeah, it'd be tough. It'd be tough to pick
Yeah,
one.
yeah, yeah. Good, good. You played in the same team with some players that have had a huge impact on the season last year. One of those was young Fletcher Holman that got a move to Premier League Wolves.
Yeah.
Did you know straight away in training that he was special, and how far do you think he can go, Mike?
So I think first session, what I really liked about Fletch, first session, I remember I came in and he went out of his way to talk to me and have a little laugh with me, which I thought was quite mature of him. He had good size on him, and the one thing Fletch could do, Fletch could shoot. That's like he just spent time shooting, shooting, shooting after training. So I always thought Fletch was good. I think it was just obviously the finer details, but when you bear his age in mind, it's
Yeah.
like he's got everything he needs, and he's got age on his side as well. So I'd never question how far he could go. If I'm honest, I wasn't entirely expecting a Premier League club to come in and select him. If I am honest, I don't think any of us was. But yeah, whilst the food's hot, you gotta eat it, right?
Yeah, and to get on the bench so soon as well, right? He's been on the bench a number of times. Incredible.
It's a
Yeah,
massive statement
great
going
stuff.
into
Yeah. Another player that came in towards the end of the season but hit the ground running was Yaya Bumba. Is he as good in training as he is in a match?
it. Yeah, I would say yeah, relatively. Maybe he turns it on a bit more in a match. But yeah, he definitely hit the ground running. Obviously, we used to play together as well, me and Yaya, so I'm quite familiar with him. But yeah, he's a good player, but more importantly, he's a good person as well. That's what I like about him
Yeah.
most.
I didn't know that. So you played in a different team with him before?
No, so we kind of grew up around the same area. So we got like a relative and a wider social group of friends that play football. Like we've spent a lot of time training together, doing extras.
Oh, wow, amazing. So Agent Mike, maybe you had something to do with him coming to the club. We'll leave it there and you can take the credit for that, Mike. You was talking earlier on about the dark arts, in football. In that one match this season, I found myself standing next to a fan from the other team, and you had just cleanly but very physically won the ball from one of their players. And then I remember this fan having a proper go at you as you walked past her. You then apologised to her, which made me really laugh. As a player, how aware of you of a crowd are you, and can you typically hear individual comments?
Okay, cool. So disclaimer, you shouldn't pay any attention to the crowd rush you're playing. For me personally, when I'm in my element, I'm playing, and although I may be aggressive or whatever at any point, if you see me smiling during the game, I'm in my zone. So there are times where maybe there's like a individual comment that your ears might just pick up to, and in the moment you might respond or you might just give a smile or something. But obviously not as far as it to take you off your game, of course. But yeah, you are somewhat aware, and I feel like sometimes the negative stuff ring a bit louder, unfortunately.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, you are somewhat aware.
Yeah, yeah. Eastbourne Borough as a club is pretty lively on social media, and as in all things, that attracts all sorts of people, including some people that like to be negative about everything. How aware are the players of social media comments, and has this affected you in either a good way or a bad way?
So me personally, obviously, I've got like Twitter, which um, I don't even keep it on my phone. I literally keep it on my missus' phone. So any late replies, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get to it soon. And on my phone, I've only got Instagram and WhatsApp, if we're gonna call that social media. But I think a lot of the boys are a lot more on social media than I am. And obviously, sometimes you see them scrolling through, or after a game, some boys are like looking through. So I think it can have an impact. And Yeah, I guess the challenge is not to look for the negative or even the praise. Like when it comes across you, yeah, great, thank you. And when the negative comes, yeah, cool, and you keep it moving. But I think the key
Yeah,
thing for me is not to go looking for either.
yeah. That's sensible. Almost not letting the highs get too high and not letting the lows get too low, Mike. Right? It's just being, I don't know what
Uh,
the word is, neutral, if you like. Yeah,
yeah, I think that the danger with it is that well, if we take the praise for example, it's so easy as people like forget about football and all the rest, just as human beings, like who doesn't want to be liked, who doesn't want to be
yeah,
noticed, who doesn't want to be loved. So it's so easy to build ourselves or our identity or our self-esteem off of people's praise. And when we do that, it's literally like a sandcastle with a bit of wind or a good bit of water. It comes crashing down with one negative comment.
so true,
So,
mate. Yeah.
and that's me speaking from experience. I've experienced kind of going up and down purely based on people's opinions and comments and praise and negatives and whatever else. So, yeah,
Yeah,
best to
very
avoid it.
wise. Yeah, very wise. That's good. One of the frustrations this season has been the standard of refereeing. As a player that loves a battle on the pitch, what sort of interactions do you have with the ref, Mike?
So with me, I like again, like I love football. Football's my bread and butter. Like I've loved it from young. But I don't know if it's. I think it probably would be down to my faith now. Like obviously born and raised in a Christian household, but probably not until I was like 19 did I truly like say, "Do you know what, Lord, I want to live the right way. I want to be a good human, and I want to love well, and I want to open my capacity to be loved." So I think one thing I always say is referees, they're not robots. They're humans with emotions. If you have a 50-50 choice and one guy's slating you the whole game and one guy's just giving you a bit of respect, our natural inclination will be to favor the guy that doesn't upset you. So my approach has always been from the start of the game to show a bit of respect to the ref. If I'm really in my zone, I'll even have banter with the ref if he's one of those refs that's fairly cool. But I'm not a big believer or fan of like the abuse that refs get because I don't think it does any good for anyone really.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that's just me personally anyway.
yeah. It's funny. Refs are so different because obviously they're people, aren't they? But I remember being, at some games this season, and you've got some refs that are like really strict and would barely want to speak to any of the players, and you've got some refs that are like almost calling players by their nicknames.
Yeah, yeah,
It's just really
yeah.
different, isn't it?
Yeah, you got some cheeky refs. Like, I think I've probably been told to shut up by a ref, and I was like, "Wait, are you
Right.
allowed to tell me to do that?" So yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely a mixed bag.
yeah, yeah. It must be one of those annoying things as a footballer when you're playing really well, but when you pick up a knock and then whilst you're out recovering, the team goes on a run and then it's really tough to get back into the team. This happened to you at the back end of the season this year. How do you approach a situation like that mentally, Mike?
Um, it's not easy. Like I remember in that period, again, my emotions kind of like fluctuating. At some points, I'm like, might just keep going, and at some points, I'm like, you almost feel a bit hopeless. And I think in those moments, it is a test of your character. And when things get difficult, how you then act and the choices you make tend to reflect your stability as a person. And I don't think I made every choice spot on. I think I definitely made some choices that weren't the most ideal, and I could sit and excuse it because of one person or another person. But the bottom line is, the choices I make, I decide. So yeah, it's definitely difficult. It's definitely challenging trying to get the balance right because where you've got games Tuesday and Saturday, training is catered to making sure that people aren't overworking. So it feels like not only are you missing games, but your fitness, your conditioning, everything's falling off. So yeah, I think it's a challenge. It's a massive challenge, and it just requires what you're doing outside in terms of your eating, in terms of whether you're doing your extras or whether you're doing at the club after training or communicating with them to do it outside. But I think that's the challenge there, where it's like you're not playing, but you got to get up and still be hungry and
Yeah,
still keep going and still keep trusting that something comes down the
yeah.
road.
And trying to stay mentally switched on as well because you're only a phone call away from saying, you're playing again on Tuesday, and then suddenly you've got to be right ready and switched on, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard the interview that I did with Eastbourne Borough CEO Alan Williams, but I think it was in the middle of March when we recorded it, and it was at a time when I think most fans had conceded that we were going down. But Alan was hugely confident that we would stay up, and he was, of course, proved right. Did the players ever begin to think that we were going down, or did you guys always believe that it was possible to beat the drop as well, Mike?
I think it was mixed. I think you had some boys that their shoulders slouched, their energy dropped, and I guess it's a degree of disbelief just expressed without words. And you had that in some boys, and some boys were still like trying to push. So it was difficult because it's kind of like the kind of hush hush unspoken thing. Nobody wants to necessarily declare it out loud because that person signed out technically. So it,
Yeah.
it was difficult. But for me, even at the lowest points, even like at points where I've been injured and I haven't been able to help the team out, like in my heart of hearts, I've always just kind of said, we're not going down. Like we're not
Yeah.
going down. If someone had to ask me to explain how or what the formula would be, I'd probably tell you to leave leave me alone.
Yeah.
But I just felt in my heart that yeah, like we're not going down. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah, amazing. But it's not a season that we're going to forget anytime soon. It's an absolute roller coaster, wasn't it? And it's, yeah, an amazing season. One of the reasons, Mike, that I was so keen to get you on here when we have is to help promote your highlight reel that you've just produced. And from this season, I hope that you get a decent club and they'll come in and sign you up. Some great clips, including those signature Big Mike headers that travel almost halfway across the pitch. Do those hurt when you connect with them, Mike?
If you do it right, then no. But if you get it wrong, it can hurt. If you lift your head a bit too much and it comes off your nose, you're in a bit of trouble. But yeah, for the most part, it's
Yeah.
it's not too bad.
In the highlight reel, there was literally a couple of headers that looked like goal kicks, wasn't there? They literally travelled
I
across,
think
you know.
I think one of my friends commented underneath that yeah, they're looking like goal kicks. But yeah, like
Yeah.
if you get the opportunity to just put it on show, then go and make the most of it, right?
Yeah. Well, as you consider your options for next season, in case there's any managers or, chairmen listening, what would an ideal club look like for you, Mike?
It's a good question. I think an ideal club would be just kind of a full-time environment where I can be me. I think a big thing is for me, like, yeah, you got the football side of things, the playing, but also the interacting with people, the stuff outside of the pitch, that's also massive. An environment where, yeah, just good people that we can fight together with to go and achieve something. I think I don't want to just play for playing sake. I really
Yeah.
want to strive to achieve something and win things, of course. So yeah, just a good, healthy environment where we can kind of like strive together, succeed together, and go through the difficult times together. And we keep pushing, we keep grinding it out. So yeah, that's my
Yeah.
mindset.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, I know my hope, and I know I speak for a lot of Borough fans, is that you find a really good club that you can stay at for a good couple of years and become
Yeah,
a real club legend for them. And you were saying as well, off the pitch and on the pitch is really important to you, and you've got all of the ingredients to do just that. But you've got to promise, Mike, if you do end up coming back to Borough next season and you end up scoring a goal, that you're not allowed to celebrate against us.
yeah. So it's funny. I actually thought about it like a few times, to be honest. And I'm like, Mike, would you celebrate? And yeah, don't worry, you have my word. I won't celebrate. Maybe just a fist
Yeah.
pump. Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't get the chance to see a big Mike goal celebration this season. You come close a number of times. Have you got one prepared already in your locker for when you do score?
It's so funny. Like through the season, I've had points where I've had like a celebration planned because like the opportunities do come, but it's either a worldie or someone's blocked it off the line. So then I go through one period and I'm like, no, that celebration won't do. I've got the next one planned, and I've planned it in my head and it looks so beautiful. But yeah, you need those to actually see the celebrations, don't you? So
Yeah, yeah. It always reminds me of, do you remember the Ian Wright t-shirt where he had a record that he broke as a t-shirt underneath his match worn shirt? And, I always wonder how many games did he have to wear that for that he couldn't actually like reveal his shirt. For anyone that knows you, won't be surprised to hear that outside of football, you spend a lot of time mentoring young people back where you live near Croydon. What
yeah.
does that work look like and how did you get into it, Mike?
Cool. So I spent quite a couple years working at Legacy Youth Zone in Croydon, which is a charity organization, working with kids from 7 right the way up to 19 and then 21 with additional needs. How did I get into it? I think initially when I was doing my university degree, it's funny, it's a bit of a long story. I'm going to try and make it short, but when I was doing my university degree, I only did my degree because of like a serious injury that I picked up, which in a nutshell, I was 20, I tore the cartilage in my hip socket, and I thought maybe football was going to be done. So I was doing my degree, but whilst I was doing my degree, I needed a job. So I went back to my old secondary school. And when they heard, obviously, my storyline up to that point, and I was interested in coming to work with them, they jumped at the opportunity. So I was working as a TA across all different subjects, predominantly maths and the graphic design side of things. But I just felt like I really like enjoyed it, and that I'd see other teachers and TAs working, and I could see for them it was work, like they had to try it. But for me, it was just like it just felt natural. It just felt like I was back at school, and the kids
Yeah,
naturally gravitated towards me.
yeah.
So I think from that, I just really enjoyed it, and I was approached by one of the senior guys at Legacy Youth Zone, and was just kind of like, yeah, we've heard a lot about you. Like, we'd love you to get involved. Like, there's a lot of kids here that we think you could really get through to. And I just said, you know, yeah, like it's along the route home. Yeah, let's give it a go. And I went there, and I actually fell in love with it. And at the time, I didn't realize just how many that challenged children there are, and just with difficult backgrounds. We had like a lot of looked after children coming in. Some children with like anger issues and all different manner of things. Some children that would just literally sit in the youth zone by themselves and not say a word to anyone.
Yeah.
So there were so many different kinds of kids, and I think for me it was a privilege to have the opportunity to just love some of these people that you can kind of get the feeling that they're not so familiar with love. Because at first some of them are a bit like what do you want? And I'm just kind of like, look, like I just see how I can help you and support you. And I just enjoyed it. Like, yeah, you get paid at the end of the month, but for me, like my payment was there, like having those kids smile back at me, be inspired and realize that there's more to life as well. So yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can imagine you being really good at that job, Mike, for sure. One of the most troubling things facing kids today, and certainly older kids, is the increase in gang crime, which includes carrying knives, which is becoming so popular. How much of this are you seeing, and how can we go about solving this problem, Mike?
So yeah, I think there definitely is an influx. I guess we don't. Yeah, there's definitely an influx. I always ponder like what is the driving force of it. But I think it's a very difficult conversation, maybe bigger than one that we can afford to have now. But I think a big part of it is like just the music culture that's surrounding a lot of the young people and what we glorify and what we, make appealing per se. In Croydon, I think I'm sure you'll be aware there is a lot of like gang violence and knife violence and so on and so forth. And I think at points they try to put more police on the street, and maybe that simmers it down. And as they retract, the issues arise again. But I think for me, a big part of it is a lack of role models, a lack of examples of, young people that are doing well, young people that have gone on to do well, young people that maybe have come from troubled backgrounds or troubled homes that actually say, this story, I can turn it around and I can turn it for good. And this is how I've done it. And this is why you can do it. I'm a walking example. I'm a living, breathing testimony of, what can happen when we make a few right choices and we put a few good mentors and older men or older women around us that can first and foremost be vulnerable. Like it's easy to kind of look at anyone and say, do this and do that. But I think it always starts off with kind of saying where I'm struggling or where I've failed or the mistakes I've made. And then we go from there. And I guess that builds
Yeah,
trust and
so true.
relationship.
Yeah, so true. So true. Well, Mike, before we take a quick break, I want to talk to you about another thing that I know is one of the most important things in your life, and that's your faith.
Yeah.
How did you become a Christian, and what impact has it had on you?
Oof, okay. So I gave my life to Christ at 19. Up to that point, I don't think I was the nicest guy. I wasn't the nicest guy. I wasn't really a nice guy, to be honest. I was a bit horrible. Um, I did throw my weight around. I just wasn't the nicest guy without going into all the details. I wasn't a nice
Yeah.
guy, and I think for me, one thing I've always said since even in secondary school, I've always had the mindset of I want to be married one day. I want to be a father, and I want to be a man in whom my family can look at and be proud of. But most importantly, I want to be a man that my children can look at and say, "Yeah, my dad's a good man. My dad works hard. He's a good man." And I think I knew that when I looked at my life, the trajectory that I was on did not coincide with what I deemed to be my ideal dream. And it's funny because sometimes saying things like this, you kind of begin to realize I'm living the dream. Like,
Mm.
yeah, like it'd be amazing if I had a few more zeros in my bank account and the rest and whatever else. But the reality is that now I've got so much to be grateful for. And it's just saying it now that's
Yeah.
really getting me thinking. Like, I'm living the dream now. And I think giving my life to Christ, I think my mindset is like you said earlier in the gym and the rest. Like I work hard. I'll describe myself as a hustler, as a go-getter. But anything you're going to do it properly. That's my mindset. And I think a lot of people say they're Christian, but they're doing X, Y, Z, and choosing to continue doing X, Y, Z. And whereas me, I just felt like, if I'm going to do it, let's do it properly. Like no one's forcing me. My mom's not forcing me to go to church on a Sunday anymore. Like I'm my own man now. Like so, if I'm going to do it, let's do it properly. Let's do it the best that I can. And so God help me. I'm going to be a good son of the Father. And yeah, we'll be a few years later down the line now. I'm still learning. I'm still growing, and I guess I will continue doing so. But yeah, it's defined who I am now. It is my number one foundation and building block for my identity. So yeah, like that's me.
Amen. Amen. Well, we're going to take a very quick break before asking Big Mike the signature from the club questions. So, Big Mike, as you know, as a business, we're all about official signed memorabilia, and we're delighted to have some of your signed displays on our website as well. So thank you for that. In fact, shortly after you signed lots of autographs for us, I actually noticed your hand was all bandaged up. Please tell me that those two things were not related.
Oh. I only had to sign a few, so no, no.
I was thinking we didn't want to give you an injury from that.
No, it's cool. No, it's cool. It's just literally just not the greatest of risks when you're jumping and landing sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah, of course. Well, okay, so these last few questions are all memorabilia related. Are you ready?
All right, let's go. Fire away. Let's do it.
Have you ever asked anyone for their autograph before? And if so, who?
No, I haven't, I've seen a few famous people, but I don't know. I don't really get that excited. I'm like, yeah, it's another person. I love what you're doing, by the way, and I could probably just keep stepping. Yeah.
Excellent. What memorabilia do you own? And if so, what is your favourite piece?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel almost like I should cover my face when I say this, but I did Blue Peter when I was young, and I got a Blue Peter badge. Yeah. And I'm proud to say, not everyone has a Blue Peter badge. I've got one, so yeah.
Mike, I feel like we need to stop this interview, restart it from the beginning with you wearing the Blue Peter badge. Yeah, that'd be really good. So did you get to go onto the show as well?
Yeah, so I can't remember what year I was in. I was in primary school, and I got to pack my bike and take it with me, and I rode around in the studio, and yeah, managed to get a Blue Peter badge. So yeah, happy days.
Oh, I really hope that's on YouTube somewhere. I'm gonna try and find that from the archive. That'd be amazing. If you could have anyone's autograph, dead or alive, who would you have, Mike, and why?
I would. This is difficult. Dead or alive, I think I would go with Martin Luther King autographed. Why I would go for him is because he was a driver of change, and he was an example that even though people around you might not be able to see the potential for change and transition, he stood firm and believed that, like change is inevitable. And if we stand and we believe in the potential of change, then we can be the driver for the direction of which that change should come. So I think he's incredible. I think, of course, he does know Martin Luther King. So he'd be my number one.
Definitely. Well, that would definitely be a wonderful autograph to have alongside your Blue Peter badge. What a wall that would look like. Mike, I know I was going to enjoy speaking with you today, and thank you for being an absolute legend on and off the pitch this season. But before we let you go, just let the listeners know how they can follow you on social media, and also let us know your closing thoughts.
Perfect. So, well, firstly, thank you for having me. The pleasure, honestly, is indeed mine. So I'm grateful. If you want to follow me on Instagram, it's at MikeOjo5. The Twitter, I believe, is at MikeOjo5 _. And LinkedIn is there too, and that's literally just my full name, Michael Olarewaju. So That's how you
Yeah,
follow me. Closing thoughts. Yeah, more than anything, just remember to be grateful. I think it's funny because prior to this interview, in my head I was thinking, but more than anything in speaking, it just reminds me, Mike, like you're living a dream. Like you're married, you've got a child, you come from a good home, and you're currently trying to build a good home and build a culture around your family. Like you're doing well, and I'm not presenting that as the only ideal, but for like anyone watching, just don't forget to look at what you got and be grateful. I think that's what opens the way for more.
yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to make sure that I find all your social media links for LinkedIn, for Instagram, and for Twitter. Which remember, if Mike replies slowly, it's because it's his wife's
Yeah,
got the Twitter account.
yeah.
And also, whether you're listening or watching this interview, make sure that you check out Big Mike's highlight reel on YouTube. I'm going to make sure that the link is in the description below, and do him and us a massive favour. Make sure that you share it onto your social media and tell everyone what an amazing, not only player, but man that this guy is as well. Big Mike, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. The pleasure's mine. God bless you, David, man. Incredible guy.
God bless you, Mike. Thank you.